Do you know who I am? Have you seen my face? Well, I'm the child who turns away. Do you know who I am? Have you heard me talk? Well, I'm the child who speaks few words. Do you know who I am? Have you seen me play? Well, I'm the child who has no friends. Do you know who I am? Have you seen me pass by? Yes, I'm the child with the bow down head.
At first glance, they look like any other children, but they're not. They're very special. Hello, I'm Bill Cosby. And the children you've just seen have been diagnosed as schizophrenic or autistic or, more generally, psychotic. But whatever the label, one fact is clear. These children were so disturbed, so frightened, that a special effort had to be made to improve the quality of their lives. That effort was made at Step School, a therapeutically oriented daycare center located here in Chicago. The Step School specializes in working with the youngest and the most disturbed of children. They take the youngest, hoping that early intervention will lead to a more complete recovery. And they take the most disturbed because these are the children abandoned as hopeless by the more traditional treatment facilities. Their methods are experimental and unique. Step School is not committed to any particular ideology or grand theory of treatment. What they are committed to is a steadfast belief that these children can be helped. The documentary you're about to see was filmed over a 3-year period. It records a number of important changes which occurred in the lives of 5 children enrolled at Step School. Those changes took years of loving and painstaking effort to achieve, because sometimes that's what it takes to make a human being whole. It happens that way, one step at a time. Let me introduce you to our educational therapists. Sally Heineman and Richard Stanley. And these are the children. Scotty, age 3, Danelle, age 4, Tracy, age 3.5, Katrina, age 3, and Steve, age 3.5. The first step in bringing these children into the world is touch. You want to touch them emotionally. You want to touch them physically. And the best way to accomplish this is often the simplest way.
We wanted something different than sand in the sand table. We wanted something that would give noise and feel different. So we tried rice. And rice got into everything, ears and clothes and all over everything. So then we tried beans. And the beans have really been beautiful because they make lots of noise. And you can really manipulate them. They bounce. They hurt when you get hit with them. I've been very happy with the beans. I think generally the kids like them too. It's an activity that they all look forward to. You say, okay, time for beans now, and they're all right there. There's no coercion. They're right there. Danelle had never gotten involved in anything messy. Never wanted to touch anything, never wanted to do anything. He was just this prissy little boy. And to see him lose himself, completely forget about the fact that he was in school in a new situation, working with material that he'd never seen before, releasing something in himself that allowed him to get not only his hands into it, but to get his body into it and to just cover himself, and then to watch him with this wondrous expression on his face. And then to watch him retreat he sensed that he was too close. He had allowed me to touch him and to get into him. You can just see how he sort of stopped and said, wow, I've gotta go away. And to run across the room, and that was it.
Katrina knew that what was in his eyes, and it was hurting.
What she was essentially doing there was getting your attention. You had Scott in your arms at that time. She was getting your attention by being aggressive and feeding right into the same pattern.
I was trying to encourage her to throw the soap. And she did it twice in the film, and it was great fun. And then the last one where she knocks off my glasses, it was a real
What did you feel like when she knocked off your glasses?
I got to the point that you really shouldn't get to when you work with the kids, in that I felt that's the limit.
But you smiled.
Not when she hit my glasses.
As Richard found out, sometimes the children touch back in unexpected ways. Perhaps that's the thing that you can always count on working with children, the unexpected.
Scott was very anxious around water, and I just didn't understand why. He didn't want to get involved in the water that day. And I showed him that it was a safe thing to do, that he could get his feet wet, he wasn't going to melt, he wasn't going to dissolve. And he fussed and hollered. I didn't find out until much later that he, in fact, had started to play with the water at home that day in the kitchen sink and had flooded the kitchen, and his mother had gotten angry and told him that he wasn't to play in the water, and he probably aligned it with punishment. He comes to school and I tell him that it's a groovy thing to do and that he can play in and that it's safe, and he's getting a double message, and he was really being pretty rational about it. He wasn't about to get punished again for playing in the water. And what we tried to do after we realized that is to sort out, that we do different things at school. School is a different place, and we allow a lot of things that the parents can't allow at home through space limitation or tolerance for mess. We don't have to live with the kids. It's easy to be tolerant for 4 or 5 hours a day.
Well, maybe it is easy to be tolerant, but a lot more than tolerance is called for when a therapist must anticipate a child's needs without threatening that child's budding independence.
By the very fact that you anticipate that the water's going to come into his eyes, and he's not about to come and ask you to do it. You go out to him first and say, yes, I like what you're doing, I think it's fun, and this way I can be with you when we're doing it too, so that after a while, then they begin to look for you. It got to the point where when he would get his eyes filled with water, I'd say, Stephen, the towel's right here, and he'd turn around and he would dab his eyes and then keep a hold of me, go back and play. But he kept in some sort of contact with me, so that he let me enter in to his activity this time.
Now, it's one thing for a child to let you enter into his or her activity, but it's quite another thing to impose an activity on a child. It doesn't always work, as Sally can tell you.
We wanted to do something very special for Scott, and Scott was so into cornbread. What better way to celebrate than to make him a cornbread birthday cake? And we kind of set this thing up. It was really a phony thing, We had everything that the kids had ever eaten. We thought that it would get them all to the table and they would all have a party, right? We'd have hamburgers or hot dogs or something, and French fries and cornbread and
lots of ketchup.
Lots of ketchup and, everything that they had always enjoyed, and no one came to the table.
Richard and Sally's decision to encourage positive behavior without compelling it was especially strong at mealtimes. Waiting for voluntary behavior requires tremendous patience, but when it occurs, the breakthrough is all the more meaningful.
It was the first time that Stephen had ever come to the table where food was being served. It was our feeling in the beginning, because he had been forced fed and had such negative feelings about food and putting anything near his mouth, that we would never ask him to come to the table. That we would tell him that there was food there, that he had a plate, he could come whenever he wanted to, but we would never force him to come to the table, never ask him to eat with us, but more or less encourage him to just acknowledge that the food was there and to go about it at his own time. And then he did.
Well, he probably did know that it was food, but I think what attracted him was what he had learned before, and the fact that we let him play with the water. And you showed him how it jiggled. He made an association, maybe this is something to play with, but the fact that he would take the Jell-O and smell it, that there was an added dimension to this that there isn't to water. And he knows, that everyone is sitting there and eating it, but the fact that he wanted to be with us when before he wouldn't come anywhere near the table, would wander around over in the play area. I don't know, maybe he was making, learning associations there that we could somehow open up, another avenue of pleasure for him. Hopefully, taste. I was really anxious that day, because when he came to the table, I was holding my breath the whole time, because I kept thinking, if only he would stick his tongue out
and taste
it. If only he would do that. So I sat very calmly and with a one-track mind ate my food, because I thought surely if I expressed my emotions too much and how anxious and how hopeful I was, that he would probably pick up on the same kind of feeling that his parents elicit to him. I'm sure he feels that he knows that they want him to eat that so badly, to eat something, and that pressure, the tension upon him to do that. Like, please, Steve, make me happy, eat this.
Here for the first time, Stevie eats by himself. It took a full 6 months for Stevie to take his next step.
He allowed us to feed him for the first time from a spoon, and I wanted to try to make this experience a mutual one for him. I would give Stephen food from his spoon, and then he would wait and stop eating, then I would eat, but I wanted both of us to partake in the feeding situation.
What Rich did that was instinctive is that he opened his mouth with each bite. And this is how you show a baby how to eat, just like a mother bird feeding baby birds.
Stephen came back to school after a very difficult summer where he was pulling his hair out and scratching himself. And his parents took him to one of the hospitals, and they suggested that Stevie be put in arm restraints because it was almost impossible for anyone to handle him. We were caught in the position of not liking to have the arm restraints because we wanted him to trust people to help keep him from hurting himself. But by the same token, he'd become used to these arm restraints, and they did give him a measure of security, so that we wanted to slowly wean Stevie from the arm restraints and to reestablish a trust with us.
The painstaking process of building mutual trust and human contact moves slowly, step by step. But every so often, those tiny steps add up, and then one day, almost without realizing it, you discover that the children have made tremendous progress.
I think this shows how far the children came. They're able to be close to each other now and participate in one focal activity. I was always amazed that the children would sit that close to each other, hold on to each other. I asked them to give me a sign, and I'd say, give me a touch if you're ready to go. Each child would reach out and hit my hand, and we'd take off, and we called it our preschool express.
We used the swimming pool to encourage the children to have contact with us. They were so little that they had to seek human contact. They could not stand up in the water without it going over their heads, so they had to accept us. It started out just to use us to keep their heads above water, but it very quickly changed, and our relationship became a more normal one, a playful one, and we established a lot of eye contact with the children. It was almost like the children were going back to the womb, that they were enveloped in this warm, secure environment, and because of its safety, it allowed them to become more accepting of what was around them.
As Sally pointed out, Safety precautions on behalf of the child are not just a matter of physical protection. They also provide a feeling of warmth and security, which is essential to the therapeutic process.
When you're outside, out of bounds of the school, there's so many other children. The safety precautions become even more difficult. When you're on something as scary as moving equipment, you're constantly talking to the children, reassuring them. And you can see Sally pushing Tracy on the swing, trying to make a variation on the activity, saying, open your eyes so you can see, try to touch your nose. What happens a lot of time with inexperienced people, they take a lot for granted. For a lot of these children, when you're out of sight or when they can't even sneak a look at your face, you're not there for them. Our student teacher was turned away, and you could tell her mind was not with the children. You've got to feel that when you're playing with a child, that is the most important thing going on at that time.
Tracy had a lot of difficulty letting the teachers be close to him. The day at the playground, I decided I was going to stick right with him no matter where he went and try to really interact with him. And I had tried numerous times to get him to go up the slide. He never wanted to do it. I went up the first time and talked to him about the slide and went down with him. And then the next time he felt good enough about it that he went up and down by himself. But that was too much for him. Once he allows an intrusion into his world, it's a terrifying thing. And he runs away.
We know that with children, change occurs slowly. But with these children, it's one fragile but precious step at a time.
If I could trust you, I would. If I could hold out my hand, if I could look in your eyes, if I could trust you, I would. If I could walk by your side, if I could eat from your plate,